Welcome to the Million Dollar Multi-Op Podcast. Here, you're going to find education, entertainment, and a little inspiration on how to get to the next level. Are you a DJ company owner that's looking for the secret sauce? Congrats, you found it.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Million Dollar Multi-Op Podcast. I'm your host, David Osborne with BlueprintLearn.com. I'm really excited. Now, I'm excited about all guests. I'm extra excited about our guest today because joining me from halfway across the world, we have the one and only Glenn Mackay. Welcome, Glenn.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Everyone know that I'm flying solo on the sound effects tonight because we always record in the morning, like almost always. But tonight we're recording later in the evening to accommodate Glenn's schedule since he's across the other side. Today's a Wednesday where I am. It's a Thursday where Glenn is. And so I think this is a really cool opportunity to kind of open up kind of everyone's perspective about just like what's out there. And I've known Glenn for a while, and I think he's an excellent business owner, and I've learned a lot from him, and I think you guys are going to get to learn a lot from him as well today too. So, Glenn, why don't you kind of give us the rundown of where you are located within Australia?
Yeah, so I am in Brisbane, Australia, which is on the east coast of Australia. If you can imagine, like the closest bit of Australia that sticks out to LA, that's where I'm at.
Do you fly out of Sydney, or is there another airport that's?
No, I can fly out of, like when I travel to the States, it's usually fly from Brisbane straight to LA, or sometimes I'll fly via Sydney to LA to get there. And it's typically LA is then the launching point to wherever else I've got to go from there, or other times I'll go the other way around the world. It just depends on what I can get.
Heck yeah. And I remember, one of the things, since I've interacted with Glenn a lot, and Glenn is in mentor pods, and this comes up a fair amount in conversation when I talk with him, and we've been on some committees together, is obviously the seasons are different. So right now I'm cold in where I am, and we're expecting ice and snow in Georgia coming up here, and it's summer where you are, which is so exciting. And you took a trip a couple years ago, right? And you went to Europe?
Yeah, we were in Europe this time last year, and we were shooting for a white Christmas. A white Christmas is not something we typically get here. So yeah, we got snow on a couple of days while we were there, and it's actually, I don't like the heat as much, so I'm very keen to travel in our summer to get away from that and get into those colder temperatures.
Man, someday we're going to swap. I would love palm trees for my Christmas any day. I'd swap with you in a second. That sounds great. But maybe the grass is always greener, so who knows? Okay, so you're the owner of G&M. Talk to us a little bit about that. Talk to us about your multi-op. Talk to us about maybe how you started it and kind of how you got into growing that company.
For sure. So I guess the short version of that is G&M is myself, Glenn, and M is Miranda. So those who know me will know Miranda is my wife and a huge part of our business. Has been from the start. It's always been the two of us. So I started DJing for a large across the country multi-op, what we would call dodgy, so not very high quality. It was bad equipment, no training, just out there with a few CDs, doing the best you could. And at 19, that's when my wife and I decided that we could do this better ourselves, because at 19, you know everything, right? So it was fine. So we continued to emulate their model pretty quickly, having multiple DJs working with us, because I've never been a great DJ. For me, it's always been about the business side of things that I've loved more. So we just copied what we knew from what I'd done, because there was no Facebook, there was no YouTube, there was no mentor pods, there was no blueprint, there was no way to learn this stuff. It was just go out and do what you've always done. So we did that and sucked at that for a while and realized that we weren't making much money doing that, but it was fun, and it was a nice little side hustle, for want of a better term. And then eventually the internet sort of opened up us to some stuff, the old DJ chat boards back in the day. We started our business in 1999, so it was a long time ago that we started into this. So the DJ chat boards, I remember purchasing Randy Bartlett's 1% Solution DVDs, volume 1 and 2, so I could save a little bit on shipping. And like it was just revolutionary to me. Like there's concepts in there that I'd never heard of, never understood. In the US, it is very common for the DJ to also be doing the MC role. Over here, back then, it was never a thing. The DJ DJ'd and the MC was a uncle or a cousin or brother or best man or someone. So we were able to kind of start offering something different. And that's kind of where things sort of leveled up in our business is we were doing stuff that other people weren't. A two-person package. I saw Randy's having an assistant. And I was like, well, I don't like DJing. I'm not very good at it, but I could MC, I reckon. And so I was doing that with one of my DJs. So it was a two-person deal. It started to gain traction over time. I eventually traveled a little bit more back to I traveled for the first time to the US to go to Mobile Beat conference back when that was a thing. And I did a Mavic workshop, and that's where I met some of some friends that we have. I met Jeremy there, who's probably been definitely has been a huge influence in my life and my business. And that was a key part of when we came back from that trip. It was just like, it just started to take off.
What year was that you went to Mobile Beat?
Oh, I gotta say it's maybe like 2012, 2013 maybe. So okay. Yeah. And then of course we were straight back the next year, and we met other people as well on that trip. And that was the thing that was I can identify as a very much a fork in the road of where we started to accelerate. And it was, I think, doing the workshop prior to the conference. I think if I'd just gone to the conference without the workshop, I would have sat in the back. I wouldn't have made friends. I'm naturally very introverted. I'm not a person who goes out and easily makes friends. But in a workshop environment, it's a smaller group. You get to know each other over a couple of days. And everyone in the workshop was fantastic. But I really connected with people who were in similar situations to me, married, young family, all these sort of things. And it's been great to have them along for the ride and see what they've done. They've done amazing things and gone from strength to strength. And that just inspires me to keep going. So, yeah. And then Jeremy has introduced me to other groups of people, and that's leveled up as well. It's just one of those things that's why I could see it as a definitive fork in the road of networking and just finding someone that shot me off in a good direction.
Yeah, and I love what you kind of said, that because with most of the guests that I've had on the podcast, and then also just hey, we're in the same industry, we go to a lot of the same shows, we're around a lot of the same people. The typical story is, hey, I was an entertainer, I was a hotshot entertainer, I loved the craft of DJing, I was a great DJ, and then you stumble into the business, or the business has to be a thing that you got to figure out, or you have to learn to like. And it's really cool, and it's really refreshing to hear that you were like, okay, right. I mean, I'm doing this thing. I enjoy doing this thing, but like, I kind of see the potential for like the game of business. And you kind of took that approach. And we know some people like that now that are just really great at business, and, they've really flourished with it. And I think that's an awesome thing to embrace.
Yeah, I think it's realizing where your strengths are and then understanding that, like, because there's some amazing DJs in the world who suck at the business side of things and therefore struggle. So for me, it was identifying that I can help those people. And we've hired some amazing DJs who suck at running businesses, but we're able to do all the stuff that they're not good at. And it becomes a win-win-win situation. So win for me, it's a win for them, and it's a win for the clients. So the clients get the great sort of experience on the front end with the service and the prompt replies and stuff like that. Responding to someone when a DJ is asleep. Everyone else is sleeping, but the business people aren't sleeping. And then the DJ is able to go in there and crush the event. Like, that's just a great client experience. And that's like, for us, it's always built around the client experience, is how can we make that better? And that's one of the ways that we've done it, is each person doing their thing. Right seat on the right bus is a common phrase many of your listeners have probably heard.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, it's so many times, I think one of the things that holds so many aspiring business owners and people that are trying to get to the next level, what holds so many people back is either pigeonholing yourself and saying, I am this, I have to stay this. And so many people feel like they have to do it alone, or it. And I would maybe go one step further. I think a lot of people feel like if they can't do it alone, there's something wrong with them. Like if I can't be, we were talking a little bit earlier before we started recording about traction and integrators and visionaries and kind of the yin and yang between someone who is creating a vision and someone who's actually getting it done. If most people can't do it on their own. You have to find someone else. And I think allowing yourself to, like Glenn's saying, hey, you love the game of business. These people over here can crush the events. Let's pair up together and let's make this thing happen. That's awesome. So kudos to you.
Yeah, and different personality types flow into different roles better. Like if you're a single op DJ out there crushing everything yourself, or a multi op who's running the business, doing events, and doing all the sales, doing all the marketing, like power to you. I'm just not that smart to be able to, or have that much energy to be able to do it. And I've always been about team, and it's always and the thing is, even a single op has a team. They just don't maybe see it as their team yet. It could be the team of their suppliers, their professional help, like accountants and lawyers and stuff like that if you need it. Like you've got to look a bit bigger than immediately in front of you for your team. And then as you grow, you bring those people sort of into your team more directly. And I think that's where things can really accelerate a business. Is like for us, it was putting on an admin person that really leveled up for us. Like taking away the 400,000 mundane things that we do as business operators and having someone who is just doing that. Like our admin ninja, she is phenomenal. She will take so much work off everyone's plate that works here. But if you put her out DJing or emceeing an event, she would shut down. That is not her scene. And that's where she appreciates what we do and we appreciate what she does. So again, it's a win-win situation.
I couldn't agree more. And like I said, I think that awareness is key. I think just knowing your role, and like you said, the seat on the bus. But you touched on something that I think is, if not the most, one of the things that I've always admired about you is your commitment to growth, and a commitment to growth to the level of, I've seen what the tickets cost to fly from Australia to LA. I know that it's not a cheap experience to go to travel across the world, to go to Mobile Beat. And for all the young bucks listening, that would be kind of the iteration now as MEX or Mobile Entertainment Expo. It was the show in Vegas for the longest time. And then I actually went in 2018, and that was also life-changing for me. But the fact that you're like, okay, listen, I could stay right here in Australia and I could do what we've always done and we could stay the way we've always stayed. But hey, there's this Randy Bartlett guy, there's Mark Farrell, there's these people putting on workshops. I got to get over there. That's not easy, especially you said you got young kids. How did you kind of wrestle with that decision to say, okay, this is like kind of probably uncomfortable obstacle, but it's worth it? How did you like make that leap over that?
Yeah, so to be honest, the location of Las Vegas, it being there, like Mobile Beat being there, was super helpful because for us, it was our first big international trip. Like we'd traveled to like New Zealand and stuff like that, which is a 3 hour flight versus a much longer flight to get to Vegas. I think it's about 13, 14 hours to LA and then another hour or so on a separate flight to Vegas. But I'd always wanted to go there. For me, it was like, this is the greatest place on earth. I knew it was going to be tacky. I knew it was going to be incredibly cheesy, but I was down for it. I was fully there. So we organized quite a bit of a trip on the first trip. It was around our 10-year wedding anniversary. So we renewed our wedding vows in the drive-through across from the strip club with a blow-up doll on the bucking Bronco. Like it was like as cheesy as we could get it. We hired a convertible. We went out to the Grand Canyon and helicopter down into it. Like we did all the tourist things. Well, not all of them because there's so many there, but we made a trip of it, and we were there for I think, around close to 2 weeks by the time we did everything and workshops. And so that initial one was a huge investment, but we kind of tricked ourselves by telling us it was a holiday as well. So the first ones were definitely the hardest ones, especially because around that time the business revolved so much around Miranda and myself. Our roles within the business were a lot heavier, but it forced us, if we wanted to go back, because we were growing quickly, if we wanted to go back, we had to put systems and processes in place for us to step out of the business for a week or 10 days and come back to a business that was not only alive, but thriving or surviving, right? So that kind of became a challenge. And my wife especially, and me to a lesser degree, but my wife especially, is like, if you tell her she can't do something, we'll give her a challenge. She's going to do it. Like, she's going to tear it up. So um, originally it was like just baby steps at first, and there were missteps in there for sure. Like, we put our trust in the wrong people from time to time and cost us money while we were away, but it is what it is. But it's just a constant evolution to the point where when I was over there in late 2024 for a conference, it was a fairly last minute decision to head to Wedding MBA. And I said it was actually in the busiest week of our year that I was going to be gone. It's all of our what we call school formal, which is like prom season. And I don't know how many events we did, 30, 40 odd events that week. And I said to the guys, can we do it? And they're like, it's got to a point where they're like, just go and let us do it so that you don't mess it up, Glenn. And I was just like, this was like music to my ears, because so many times in our businesses, as an owner, a founder owner especially, we always think that we know better. It's all about, well, there's no one who'll do it as good as me. And when someone can do it better than us, and we often won't hire people who we think are better than us because we don't want that hit to the ego, especially as DJs. And for me, it's become music to my ears it's almost like when you have a team underneath you or around you, your employees are kind of like your children. So when they achieve, it's like a proud dad moment for me. And I'm like, well, you've just done all that, and I didn't have to touch that event, and that event was amazing. It's one of the best things we've ever done. I didn't have to touch it. I don't see that as hurting my feelings. I see that as like the biggest win, because I don't want to be in this thing in every role forever. I need to do less and less and less. That's the way I see my role in the business. And part of the joy of that is providing employment for others and seeing their journey, whether that's they bought a new car because they've got a full-time job DJing, and a full-time job DJing is a rare thing here, and they bought a house or they did this thing, and it's because we've helped provide that opportunity for them, and they've worked for it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not gifting anyone a car here, but it's great to see them achieve in life, because most of our staff are younger than I am. There's a couple that are older, but most are younger, and you're seeing them kind of milestone in their life, and it's phenomenal.
Level up, Glenn. Let's go.
Level up.
Yeah,
Nice.
let's go.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, listen. That you said something in there that I've experienced for myself. I try to preach it to people, but I think it kind of has to come from within you. It's a hard thing to like just tell someone else to do. Is the fact that you used the thing that you wanted to do, which was go to Vegas and also go learn things, as the mechanism to be like, we got to put some systems in place to allow you to do the thing you wanted to do. Like, you kind of like reverse engineered it. That's a thing that I try and encourage people to do. That's how you're able to take any time off ever. And then that thing you just said at the end, like, we often don't hire people that are better than us because it's an ego thing. That's a huge nugget right there. You should try to find people that are better than you in different roles, because you're going to grow so much faster.
100%. We were at our local conference, Australian local conference here. Oh, it would have been, I think it was in July or August last year. And a few of my team were there, and other people would see them answer a question way better than me. And then like there was seconds where they would almost like laugh at me or they would straight up laugh at me because like, oh, that guy's smarter than you and he works here. I'm like, yeah, that's a good thing. And you could almost see that like, oh yeah, because
Yeah.
I don't need to be smart in that area because he or she is. I don't need to be smart in that area because he or she is, and vice versa. They don't need to know how to do what I do because that's what I do. And
Yeah.
but there's always crossover in there, a lot of interest, and that's typically the things when we come back from those education trips. There's always, what did you learn? What's the new cool stuff did you see? Because it's not as relevant anymore, but back when we started going, because stuff in the US would trickle down to here and it would take some time with the YouTube and Facebook groups and stuff like that. It's quicker, but depending on the thing, it's often slower, depending on the information. Like products will get here quicker. Information, education can take longer to get here, like the good stuff. Like there's,
Yeah.
like, for example, there's amazing things that you can do. Like if the blueprint, for example, was around when I first started, access to that information was not a thing here. Sure, it'd take you 14 years to download the video at the speeds we have here, but you can access that within minutes now. If you're a brand new DJ, you can be up, you can be in the blueprint or whatever resource, and you've got access to it. You can watch YouTube videos, you can join Facebook groups and learn at a much quicker rate. But it's the more advanced stuff. I think the very niche stuff, the little tiny nuggets that you take away from people that only come from one-on-one conversation or brainstorming around things. And when you're brainstorming with people who aren't in your market, because we all network with people in our market, but I find a lot of that is a little bit, there's always something held back. And whereas when you're networking with someone on the other side of the world, you can tell them anything. They're not stealing any of your clients. Like, I can be 100% honest with someone like yourself when we chat in person because you're not stealing my clients and I'm not stealing your clients. So you're more likely to be open with me. And it just goes a little bit deeper in the learning. That's my experience anyway. And ultimately, with any education, if the ROI is there, you're going to do it. Like I wouldn't be traveling if the ROI wasn't there to benefit.
Bingo. Bingo. I was tossing around the term chief learning officer. I think just when we were texting back and forth and getting ready for this podcast, but so many times the role of a CEO is a vision caster, is someone to set the vision and set the tone and set all the things. And oftentimes, and I find myself still in this role very, very regularly, is like leaving the tribe, going out, hunting, bringing the thing back for your village and letting everybody feast, and then teaching other people how to hunt and teaching other people how to gather, and then like building it out so that ultimately you can, that it exists without you, but like it requires you to get out there and be eager. And like there's, there's the past few years because of the blueprint, I think I've been to almost all the shows. I haven't been to Harvest of Sound yet. But every show there are nuggets, every seminar there's something you can pick up, and it just depends on kind of like where you are in your journey and what you're listening for. But you hit the nail on the head when you've got the opportunity to talk to somebody and really get past just the presentation style stuff. You can really get to some really phenomenal stuff that only exists on the back end or through a question you might ask. We might talk about a DJ event planner or a simple question, and that might lead to, wait a minute. Why is your financials look like that? Like, where did you find that report? And
Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw like Kristen Hubbard's like reports in DJ EP. I was like, you can do that, and that opened up so many conversations.
Yeah, I've done the same thing with other people when they open up their software of choice and they show you something, you'll be like, whoa, hang on, rewind that. Where did you get that? Where's that link? And yeah, but something you just mentioned, I think is super key and a lot of people miss is teaching it to others is how you master that skill or that knowledge. And for me as to use your term, chief learning officer, my job is to teach what I learn overseas to my team back here. And so a lot of that, I've got to really understand, I've got to digest it and then want to implement it. Because many of us go to these conferences and events, and we go there and we have some fun and we network with some old friends, and then we go back home and do exactly what we did. And that's certainly something that I could do, but it's not as beneficial as if I was to really digest it. And a long plane ride home certainly helps, but being able to put all those thoughts and those ideas down and then bring it back and talk to the relevant people in our team about it, whether it's a sales thing or a marketing thing or an operation thing or a software thing or a equipment thing, and being able to understand it enough to teach it to someone else certainly helps as well. Like, you've got to put in a little bit more work, I think, to be able to get the benefit from it. But teaching it to someone else is key.
Teaching someone else is absolutely the key, because there's no way that you can explain something to someone else if you don't get it yourself. So the past year, I know, let's see, I know you went to Wedding MBA. I saw you at Midwest, which I didn't expect you to see at Midwest. Oh, look, you got the Midwest.
Yeah.
Man, you got the merch.
That was just coincidence.
Where, what are some shows that you think you might be at? It doesn't have to be just in the States. It could just be in Australia. Like, what shows are coming up for you in 25?
Yeah, so in Australia, the Beat Mix conference is where it's at. It's the biggest one we have, or I think it might even be the only one we have here. It's a small event. There's sort of under 100 people typically, but it's a good hang. I liken it to Midwest DJs Live in the sense that it's very community. You know a lot of people. It's very well planned. It's put together by a committee rather than an owner per se. But that's always on my agenda. It's also like an hour's drive south. So as far as conferences go, that's a no-brainer for me. And that's one my team will come along to as well. Some of my team will come along to as well. And we're just in talks of whether or not we'll head over to MEX. I don't think we'll make it this year, but it's definitely one on my radar. I've not been since it's MEX. And some things we hit every year, and some things might be every other year or every third year, depending on location and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, and I know, I mean, hopefully we'll be crossing paths again this year. But
definitely will be.
I have a question for you that I hope you have an answer for. But so most of the listeners on this podcast are in the United States, but definitely not as percentage-wise, probably not as many as a lot of listeners would think. And I was looking at the metrics before we got on here, and I'm pulling it up right now. 3% of all the listens of this podcast are from Australia, which is great. And there's a breakdown in there and all this stuff, but like, that's a significant amount because we do have quite a few listeners. It's the third largest listener base. So like the United States is like 89%, Canada's 3%, Australia's 3%. And then we break down to like a ton of other little places. There are, unique challenges to wherever you live because of the economies and just the nature of the cultures of the places that you live. And I think there's a lot in common with the United States and Australia culturally, but like, what are some of the unique challenges to running an event company in Australia that like I would never have to deal with living here?
Yeah, so based on my knowledge of the US industry and our industry here, and I chat with a lot of DJs in the US. I probably chat with more DJs in the US than I do here, just because of my network over there and things like that. But the biggest differences I see is wage costs and red tape here. Like, wage costs are way higher here than, as in what we can legally pay someone to do a very mundane job is much higher than in the US. Tipping is not a thing here, thankfully. But red tape, there's a lot more. There's red tape, translate, that's an American term. You get that one.
Like
so a lot of government stuff and insurance requirements and all of that. We're probably, I guess, California, I know is probably the worst of the US. We're probably a little bit more ahead of it than them. That's how bad it is. But they're the things that frustrate us the most. Equipment costs are obviously higher here because everything gets shipped here, and it's a long trip on the boat to get a whatever brand speaker from the US typically to here. And then, although the like buying like knockoff stuff from China is probably cheaper here because we're a little bit
Yeah.
closer. But and the other one is the other two things that I thought about with this is educational opportunities are much fewer and far between here. Like it blows my mind that someone won't fly 2 hours or drive 3 hours in the US to attend a workshop or a conference or a networking event or something. Like I see like the ones you've mentioned, Harvest of Sound. I saw that come up and I was like, wow, let me see if I can fit that into my schedule. And I'm like, oh no, the flight's like, $5,000 and, whatever, and exchange rate's horrible and all those things. Uh, so there's that access to education, and then the willingness to pay for it as well. I think is Americans definitely are in the DJ industry are much more like your conferences are probably better attended than ours in the sense of you guys are 15 times more populous than us, same geographical square meterage or square footage or acreage or whatever, but we're way spread out and all around the edges. And then the last part of that is just the priority of like speaking weddings here, the prioritization of couples for entertainment is much more in the US than here. We are down the bottom of the pecking order in the sense of they're going to book a venue, they're going to book a photographer, they're going to book we call it a celebrant or officiant. They're going to book all those things, and then eventually they'll get down to DJs and photo booths and things like that. On average, we're a much lower priority, and of course, with that comes a lower prioritization in budget as well.
Yeah.
So they're probably the biggest things that I've noticed.
So I would imagine then, when there's so much that's put out with educational materials, even stuff like in Mentor Pods, which I know you talk about, COGS and fixed expenses and profits and stuff, you're probably looking at that stuff and you're going, okay, I'm looking more of the theory of those things. And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to just run that through what is actually reasonable where I am and try and figure out what are the norms here that are actually healthy based on my laws and all that stuff. So you have to do a lot of translation of even a lot of the educational material just because of the makeup of like how things have to work.
Yeah, there's always a translation. Like even American style entertainment. If some of the things that I see you guys do there, if you tried that here, someone would throw their can of beer at your head. Like it's not a good place to be. But and that's with like I've done performance workshops there, I've done business workshops there. Everything needs translating, and it's not because nothing's going to copy and paste, and it shouldn't be in any business. Although like Mentor Pods, a lot of that the business elements is copy paste. Like it's like a scorecard's a scorecard. Like it's just data you're putting in, right? The math is the same anywhere in the world, but performance elements or insurance elements or tax elements, like your tax laws are fantastic. Like what I learned about American taxes in the last year, I was like, this is crazy. I'm like, should I move there? And then I'm like, no, there's a few elements that I much prefer here. But like learning them is good. And the funny thing is, I don't hate learning them. Like I spent a lot of money to learn a lot of stuff about your tax system in the middle of last year. And I was like, I loved every second of it though, even though very little of it was relevant here because I can take that information. Because at the start, I don't always know it's relevant, but I can take that information and I can bring it to my accountant and have a discussion with them about, hey, does this exist here or is there a similar kind of thing? And they usually will get the vibe of where I'm going with something and they'll investigate it or yes, no, whatever. And it's just ideas. It's bringing that idea back, putting your own spin on it. Same as with performance elements. We don't do the wobble here, and you guys do the wobble. We don't do the cha-cha slide. But I tell you what, when we have American clients who ask for the cha-cha slide or the Cupid shuffle, I know what it is, and I can tell them, yeah, we got that. I know that. We can show you that. And they're like, what? And it's a great point of difference. So, yeah.
I think, the way that you answered that about when you talked about the taxes, like you spent a lot of money to learn a thing that really wasn't directed at you because they're really directed at American business owners. But your attitude really echoes something that when we had the podcast with Todd Powers, it was the same mindset. It was an openness to learn something and to adapt and to evolve and to just be open to new ideas. That when you put those new ideas up in, and my friend Jesse says, put it in your mind pocket, when you just stick it up there and then you live your life, you get curious, you ask questions, that inspiration, like that little framework that lives up there in the head, all of a sudden you're going to make a connection to something that you can do or something that is relevant or something that does help you. So like always learning and always be learning and always looking to learn and being a lifelong learner is the entire point, right? So like, hopefully you're taking that from Glenn today and you're really, inspired to say, okay, I'm not going to be a gatekeeper. I'm not going to say this information is not for me. I'm not going to just like dismiss things, be open to learning things and trying things. And I think that's the way that you ultimately are going to find success. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, 100% agree.
Yeah, heck yeah.
100%.
Glenn, we are a little bit over 30 minutes. So go ahead and tell the people how we can find you, how we can connect with you online.
I'm kind of old. I live on Facebook. I don't even have an Instagram. It's just my name on Facebook. I think our business has Instagrams and TikToks and all the things, but for me, it's just my name, Glenn Mackay, as it's spelt there on the screen if you're watching. And I'm sure people can connect with me if they need to.
Do it to it. And guys, there's free resources, blueprintlearn.com/resources. And we'll see you on the next one.